Captain Michael Mick Ryder leaned against the cold wall of his cell, the chill seeping through his worn jumpsuit. The sound of guards' boots echoed through the dank corridors of Selkith Maximum Security Outpost, a rhythm Mick had come to know intimately over the past 5 years. His thoughts were a tangled mess, oscillating between memories of Earth and the harsh reality of his life as a prisoner. Another day in paradise, he muttered sarcastically to himself, pacing the small space. The low hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating the bare concrete walls that seemed to close in on him. Mick's eyes wandered to the barred window, where the stark alien sky was a perpetual shade of gray. Day in, day out, he watched the eerie Selkith landscape, littered with jagged rocks and strange flora. Somewhere out there, the battle for humanity's survival continued, and he was here, trapped like an animal. "Hey, Ryder, you in there?" A gruff voice called from the corridor. It was Sergeant Hale, a no-nonsense guard known for his brutal methods and quick temper. "Just counting my blessings, Hale," Mick replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "You keep that up, and I'll give you more to count." The sergeant growled back, the faintest hint of menace lacing his words. Mick didn't bother responding, knowing that any banter would only incite further irritation. The door to his cell creaked open, and a new guard, one with a more youthful face, stepped in. He was tall and lanky, clearly nervous. Captain Ryder? I'm just here to check your—" "That's Captain Ryder to you," Mick interjected, crossing his arms. The younger guard swallowed but regained composure. "Right, sir. Just checking your supplies." He fumbled with a clipboard, jotting down notes. "Yeah? You find anything interesting in there?" Mick asked, gesturing to the sparse contents of his cell. Basically nothing but a cot and a pail. He could see a shiver run through the guard. "Not really, sir." The guard hesitated, glancing around as if someone might overhear. "But, I heard some rumors. They say there's going to be an inspection soon." "A big one." Mick raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Inspection, huh? For what?" "No one knows," the guard whispered, glancing nervously at the door. "But they say they want to see if some of the prisoners might be useful." "Useful how?" Mick leaned closer, intrigued. The flickering lights cast shadows on the guard's face, and he leaned in too, clearly aware of the risk he was taking by sharing information. "They're looking for a way to gain intel on your human factions. It seems their leadership is worried about uprisings," the guard said, voice barely above a whisper. "Why would they care what happens outside? They've got us locked up," Mick countered, feeling a spark of hope ignite within him. "Unless," the guard nodded slowly, clearly understanding where he was going with that train of thought. "Exactly. If they can turn some of you against your own, it might give them an edge. Just be careful, Captain." Before Mick could respond, the guard retreated, leaving him alone with the implications of the news. "Turn us against each other," he whispered to himself, a scowl forming. It was a devious tactic he had expected from the Selkith, but knowing they were plotting something made his skin crawl. Hours passed, and the despair of confinement crept back in. Mick took to marking days on the wall, counting down in silence. He needed to stay focused. A sudden clang reverberated through the hall, jolting Mick from his thoughts. The door opened again, and this time it wasn't just a guard. It was a squad of 4 Selkith soldiers, towering and imposing. They moved with an unsettling grace that belied their brutal reputation. "Ryder," one of the Selkith said, his voice a low rumble. "You're coming with us." "Going where? Did I win a vacation?" Mick quipped, refusing to show fear. The leader, a hulking figure with multiple jagged scars across his face, stepped closer. "We have need of your skills," he replied, his mandibles clicking ominously. "Skills? You mean my ability to annoy people?" Mick shot back, but the guards were already stepping toward him, unfastening the cuffs binding him to the wall. "Step carefully, human," the leader warned, eyes narrowing. "We'll see if you have worth beyond your petty banter." As they led him through the winding halls of the outpost, Mick felt a simmering adrenaline course through him. This might be his chance. Whatever they were planning, perhaps he could take advantage of it, if he could just get out long enough to create a diversion. "Where are you taking me?" he asked as they navigated through corridors filled with unyielding metal and ominous lighting. "An inspection," the leader answered, glancing back. "You'll either be of use or returned to your cell." "Great. Just what a guy wants to hear," Mick replied, though his heart raced with a mix of dread and anticipation. He needed to gather information, and if these guards underestimated him, he would capitalize on that. The squad stopped in front of a reinforced door labeled Command. They entered, and to Mick's surprise, it was filled with various alien officers monitoring screens that displayed images of the prison yards. "Human," one of the officers said, glancing at him without much interest. "You're here because your presence is needed to encourage some of your fellows to participate in a new initiative." "Encourage? What a charming way to say coerce," Mick remarked. "You will not be given a choice, Captain." The officer's eyes glinted coldly. "You will cooperate, or you will face consequences." Yeah, I get it," Mick muttered. "But let me just say this. If you're hoping to pit us against each other, you don't know humans very well." The Selkath officer raised an eyebrow. "And what do you know of your kind, Captain?" "More than you might think. For starters, we're resourceful, tenacious, and surprisingly good at finding ways to survive." "So good luck with your little experiment," Mick shot back, feeling bolder than he had in years. But even as he stood there, tension sparking between them, he couldn't shake the feeling that this might be his moment to finally turn the tide or the start of his most dangerous game yet. Chapter 2: An Unexpected Ally. Mick stood stiffly in the command center, the walls ringing with the hushed conversations of alien officers. He could feel their wary glances pierce him, and an unsettling pulse ran through the air. The Selkath officers were discussing strategies involving the prisoners, their voices a blend of harsh clicks and low growls. "Transfer the human subjects to Sector 72. They seem more promising for the initiative," a commander declared, leering at Mick. "Initiative? What are you planning?" Mick interrupted. "You'll regret any games you play with us." The commanding officer turned to him, a cruel glint in his eye. "You think your bravado means anything here? Either you cooperate or I assure you this will not end well for you." Mick opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, the doors to the command center swung open. A Selkath named Lyra stepped inside, her luminescent blue skin contrasting sharply against the drab environment. She was smaller than the others but carried a quiet confidence that intrigued him. "What do you want, Lyra?" the commander growled. "I'm here for inquiries related to the prisoners." "They deserve a chance to understand their roles," Lyra said, her tone steady as she eyed Mick. "I wouldn't give us too much credit," Mick added, folding his arms. "All I've heard is that I'm about to become a guinea pig for some twisted experiment." "Is that how you interpret a chance to help?" Lyra challenged, stepping closer as she turned her attention fully to him. "This isn't just about you. It's about all the prisoners. We need information, and you've proven resourceful." "Resourceful? That's a kind word for stuck in a cell for 5 years," he replied, arching an eyebrow. "What do you plan to do with us?" Lyra looked to the commander as if weighing her words carefully. "We believe some humans can assist us in understanding your species. There are tensions brewing, and we need to get ahead of them. Your input could change everything." Mick narrowed his eyes. "So you want me to be a consultant for your impending disaster? What's the catch?" "The catch?" the commander scoffed. "You're here because we believe you can convince the others." The thought of persuading his fellow prisoners twisted something in Mick's gut. "You don't know them. They won't be swayed easily." "There's always a chance," Lyra insisted, her gaze unwavering. "Our methods offer them a way to survive. It's true they may not see it this way, but you are in a unique position." "Why should I trust you?" Mick asked, leaning closer. "What's to stop you from using this against us?" Lyra's expression softened for a moment. "Nothing, perhaps. But I'm different. I need you to understand that I am not like the others." The commander snorted. "Sentiment will get you nowhere, Lyra. Are you willing to risk your standing for this?" Mick noticed a flicker of defiance in Lyra's eyes. "Yes, I would risk it." She turned her focus back to Mick. "This is about survival, Captain. If you help us, we can potentially spare the prisoners from the worst outcomes." Mick felt the atmosphere shift. "All right, I'm listening." Lyra stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Meet me tonight in the storage room near Sector 12. I can share more details, but you must be discreet." Mick nodded, intrigued yet wary. "And what's your angle?" "You could get in trouble." "I'm willing to take that risk. But we need to act quickly." The Selkith plan to exploit the tensions, and I believe a human voice can change their minds, she said, glancing back at the commander, who was distracted by the discussions happening across the room. I'll see you tonight, Mick replied, determination creeping into his voice. Good. We can't resolve anything in the open. Lyra stepped back, her expression composed even as her eyes sparkled with urgency. Trust me, there's more at stake than you know. Once she left, the tension in the room intensified. Mick felt the weight of scrutiny from the officers. It made him feel exposed. What now? He murmured to himself. Ryder, the commander barked, breaking Mick's focus. Are you prepared to cooperate with the initiative or not? I'll consider it, Mick replied, trying to sound nonchalant. Consider it carefully. Your fellow prisoners are volatile. They're prone to sporadic violence. We can't afford to lose control of them. We need your influence. Yeah, well, that's a problem. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Mick shot back, but inwardly he felt a flicker of resolve. If he could use this opportunity to his advantage, perhaps he could rally the others against their oppressors. As the hours passed, anticipation built within him. When the time finally arrived, he crept through the darkened corridors, his heart pounding in his chest. The dim lights cast long shadows, and he felt every echo of his footsteps as he approached the designated storage room. He paused outside the door, gathering his thoughts. What could he say to Lyra? Would she be able to help him negotiate with the others? Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open. Inside, Lyra stood with her back to him, fiddling with a stack of crates. The moment she turned around, her expression shifted from concentration to relief. You came, she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Hard to back out now, Mick replied, closing the door behind him. What's the full story? We have very little time, Lyra said, growing serious. I believe there's a way to leverage your status. If you can get the prisoners to see reason, we can propose a solution to the higher-ups. They might listen to you if you act as a mediator. And what's in it for me? You said you wanted to protect the prisoners. How do I know you won't just betray me the moment it suits you? Mick asked, his skepticism still present. I'll do everything in my power to ensure their safety, Lyra asserted, sincerity radiating from her. Believe me, I want to end this cycle of violence. It's destroying us all. Fine. But I'll need full transparency, and if anything feels off, we walk away, Mick replied, his voice firm. What's the plan? It starts tomorrow during the morning roll call. You will speak to your peers. We'll orchestrate the timing so that I can provide backdoor support should it be necessary, Lyra explained, her expression focused. But you must be convincing. Right, Mick mused, raking a hand through his hair. I'll give it my best shot. Lyra moved closer, her intensity enhancing the moment. I know you can do this. Trust that you have the power to change things. This is risky, Mick warned. Risky is the only option we have left, she replied. In that moment, they stood close, the tension thickening the air around them. Something ignited between them, drawing them together as if pulled by an unseen force. I guess it's all we can do, Mick said softly. Yes. Together, we can at least try. With their eyes locked, Mick felt an unspoken connection form, something deeper than strategy or negotiation. It was the thrill of possibility even against the odds, and he couldn't help but lean in, meeting her gaze, feeling vulnerability mixed with intent. Time stretched, but before they could lean any closer, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. They broke apart abruptly, and Lyra's expression shifted back to focus. Time to go. I'll be ready, Mick stated, though part of him wanted to linger longer, a small flicker of something genuine amid the chaos brewing outside. As they exchanged glances one last time, Mick felt a surge of determination. He might be one man, but with Lyra's support, maybe he could turn this situation around, not just for himself, but for everyone trapped in this merciless prison. Chapter 3, The Great Escape. Morning light filtered through the barred windows of Selkith Maximum Security Outpost, bathing everything in a muted glow. Mick sat on his cot, twisting the metal piece he had fashioned into a small tool. He felt the weight of anticipation in the pit of his stomach. Today, everything could change or end in chaos. Each prisoner, restless and anxious, filed into the common area for morning roll call. Mick moved toward the front, spotting familiar faces, some weary, others hardened by time. In their expressions, he recognized the flicker of resistance and resignation. It was now or never. Ryder. Sergeant Hale called, standing at the front with his arms crossed. Do you think you're special enough to stand in front? No, but I think I might have something worth saying, Mick retorted, a defiance rising inside him as he forced himself to meet the guard's gaze. Get in line. We don't have time for your nonsense, Hale growled. Ignoring the command, Mick pressed on, stepping up toward the prisoners. Listen up. The low murmurs gradually quieted down as eyes shifted toward him. I know you've all heard the rumors. Things are changing around here. Changing? You mean worse? A sharp voice from the back shot back. It was Jace, a hulk of a man whose reputation for violence was renowned. I know how it sounds, but hear me out, Mick urged, forcing calm into his tone. We've been kept here too long, treated as nothing but expendable tools. But Lyra, a few eyebrows raised at the mention of the Selketh officer, is giving us a chance to turn this around. We could get out of here, and not just in body but with a chance to change things for our people outside. A ripple of murmuring spread through the crowd, uncertainty prevailing. What's the catch? Jace challenged, crossing his massive arms. No catches, but we need to work together. They need our cooperation, Mick insisted, grounding himself against the palpable tension. Who believes that? Another prisoner scoffed, his eyes darting about anxiously. Look, Mick said, raising his voice higher to capture their attention. If we don't trust each other now, we're lost. I've got a plan, and if you want out of this place, it's going to take all of us. Nobody's going to fight our battles for us. We have to create our own opportunities. And if it fails? Jace questioned, his skepticism ringing through the hall. Then we'll deal with that. But sitting here waiting to be pawns is not living, Mick replied firmly, his eyes sweeping across the crowd. If you want to see what's beyond these walls, now is the time. You have every right to mistrust them. But if we don't stand together, all we'll ever taste is despair. That's all nice and all. But where does this Lyra come in? Can we even trust her? Another voice piped up from the back. Trust is a risk, yes. But from what I've seen, Lyra isn't like the others, Mick stated, his conviction gaining strength. She wants to help us. If she SJDS in convincing her superiors that we can be an asset, we stand a chance. Slowly, a few prisoners began to shift, looks of contemplation replacing their earlier cynicism. And what do we do if she changes her mind? Jace persisted, clearly still skeptical. Then we will find a way to make her listen, just as we've always done, Mick said, looking Jace square in the eye. But first, we have to agree to Lyra's plan. A hesitant murmur rippled through the crowd as the prisoners began to discuss among themselves. Mick used the moment to his advantage, making eye contact with those who looked perscoop. Finally, a nod from Jace caught his attention. Fine, I'll listen. But if Lyra double-crosses us, it's on your head, Ryder, Jace warned, a mix of respect and challenge in his tone. Good. All I ask is that we try as a unit, Mick replied, steeling himself for what was to come. Before he could elaborate further, the roll call abruptly finished, and the guards stepped closer, ready to usher the prisoners back to their cells. Mick's mind raced with possibilities, planning how he could contact Lyra again to inform her of their decision. Later that evening, Mick paced the confines of his cell as anticipation rolled over him like a thundercloud. The plan was in motion, and he needed to center himself. He had no clue if Lyra would be receptive to what he hoped might come next. Ryder, a voice called from the shadows just outside his cell, momentarily halting him. It was Lyra, her silhouette barely visible in the dim light. Lyra, you came, he said, stepping closer against the bars. I spoke to them. And? Her eyes sparkled with expectation. I think they're willing to give it a shot, Mick replied. But we need to agree on terms first, something that assures them they're not merely pawns. Lyra nodded, her expression serious. That's wise. I can arrange a meeting in my quarters tonight. But we have to be wary, the commander might be listening. We'll have to speak in code. Code? You want to play a game? Mick asked, raising a brow. Just ensure our conversation remains private. I'll create a distraction, Lyra explained. We can meet after the guard's shift change. Okay. I'll be waiting, he replied, a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. And if something goes sideways, trust me, Mick. I won't let anything harm you or your fellow prisoners, she assured him. As Lyra slipped away, Mick felt a surge of exhilaration. There was a chance for something greater ahead. Later, darkness settled over the outpost and... Ly, careful not to draw notice from passing guards. Lyra opened the door swiftly, pulling him in. Good, you made it, she said, urgency in her voice. We have to be quick. Mick scanned the room. So, what's the plan now? We'll bring in a few of the prisoners, just the ones you trust will cooperate, Lyra replied, her expression focused. I'll guide the conversation, but you need to reinforce that you're willing to lead if things start to slide. Fine by me, Mick agreed, feeling adrenaline coursing through him. I'll signal them now. Remember, be diplomatic but firm. You need to drive their fear into action. Lyra turned to the door and cracked it open just far enough to see the echoing corridor. After a few moments, Jace, along with a few others, shuffled in, cautious yet intrigued. They settled around a makeshift table in the center of the small room. Everyone's on edge. Why are we risking this? Jace said, caution taut in his voice. Because we have an opportunity, Mick began, meeting the eyes of the gathered prisoners. This isn't just about escaping. Lyra and I are working on a plan that can turn the tide in our favor. We need assurances, another man interjected, skepticism ringing in his tone. I know. We're not just pawns in this game, we're the players. Lyra's willing to back us, she wants to make a change within their ranks, Mick explained, feeling the pressure build. The tension crackled like a live wire. Jace leaned forward, studying Lyra with narrowed eyes. Why should we believe you? Because I have something to prove, just like all of you, Lyra replied, her voice calm and unwavering. I fight for a reason, a chance to create something better. Mick nodded in agreement, and if we band together and show strength, there's no way they can ignore us. We have a unique opportunity to negotiate our future. Negotiation? Or manipulation? Jace replied, his tone still wary. It's more than words, it's about taking action, Mick emphasized, staring into Jace's eyes. If you want to get out, cooperate with Lyra. If this fails, we've lost nothing more than already. And how do we know there won't be another trap? Another prisoner asked, folding his arms. Because we'll be prepared, Lyra asserted, determination echoing in her voice. I promise to put everything I have into this. If trust is what you need, then believe that I stand with you. A lingering silence followed as the weight of decisions settled among them. Mick felt the gravity of the moment. This was their chance to turn the tide, yet so precarious. Fine, Jace finally relented, leaning back in his chair. But if you fail, we'll hold you accountable under your own terms. Understood, Lyra replied, her gaze fierce and unyielding. Mick nodded as the sense of urgency grew. They had formed an unlikely alliance, one that could very well tip the balance of their fates. He looked around at the faces surrounding him, feeling hope swell among them. What's next? Mick asked, feeling the adrenaline pulse with the weight of determination. Tomorrow, we'll gather information, Lyra replied, her resolve clear. We'll plan our steps carefully from here. Mick felt the corners of his mouth rise, fueled by the idea of taking control of their destiny. They were united for a cause, stepping into the unknown together. And if they played the game with strategy and courage, they might just find a way to break these chains once and for all. Chapter 4, The Reckoning. Morning arrived with a haze of uncertainty hanging over Selkith Maximum Security Outpost. Mick stirred on his cot, the weight of the previous night's meeting pressing heavily on him. They had made a pact, a coalition of sorts, forged among distrust and necessity. As guards shuffled through the corridors, he caught wind of whispered rumors. The command center was restless, they weren't merely assessing prisoners but gauging the potential for revolt. Mick felt the urgency building inside him. If they lost this chance, it might be a long time before another arose. Ryder. A familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Sergeant Hale, striding through the corridor with a tight-lipped expression. Get moving. Commander Magnus wants to see you. Great. Just what I wanted. Mick muttered under his breath but complied. As he followed Hale, he felt a mix of dread and determination surge within him. They reached the command center, a stark room lined with screens showing security feeds from various parts of the prison. Mick could see fellow prisoners milling about the exercise yard. The mood seemed tense. Ryder, front and center, Commander Magnus ordered from his seat, his tone flat. Dressed in an authoritative uniform adorned with insignia that marked his high rank, he was every bit the intimidating figure. Mick stepped forward, trying to keep his composure. What do you want, Commander? Magnus leaned back in his chair, studying him like a chess piece in play. You've been given an opportunity to assist us. Right? Or become another chess piece in your game, Mick replied, unwilling to show weakness. Smart mouth. You need to learn your place, Magnus shot back, his expression darkening. We're offering you a chance for leverage. If you help us gather intelligence on your fellow prisoners, we might consider your transfer to a less restrictive environment. And why would I help you? Mick challenged, feeling his resolve firm. Because it's in your best interest. We know there are factions among your kind. Help us keep them in check and you might just walk free, Magnus stated, his tone slick with false brotherhood. Yeah, right? Walk free and into a trap. Mick scoffed. Need I remind you that we have more power than you can imagine? Magnus leaned in closer, the menace in his voice palpable. You can either support this initiative or I can have you put into solitary confinement until your spirit breaks. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Mick clenched his fists but swallowed his anger. I'll think about it. Good. But remember, time isn't on your side. I'll be expecting your decision by morning, Magnus replied, dismissing him with a wave of his hand. Mick turned to leave, anger bubbling beneath the surface. As he exited the command center, he spotted Lyra waiting in a shadowy corner. Did he threaten you? She asked, her voice low but filled with concern. Nothing I can't handle, but he's trying to manipulate me into turning on the others, Mick replied, frustration evident in his voice. Lyra frowned. That's their tactic. They thrive on fear and division. We can't let them exploit that. Right now, it feels like they have the upper hand, Mick grumbled. Then let's change the game, Lyra suggested, stepping closer to him. Gather your fellow prisoners. We need to reinforce our solidarity. Easy for you to say, he replied, feeling the heaviness of responsibility. My fellow prisoners are scared. They won't listen unless they trust me. Then earn that trust. Be their voice, Lyra urged. We need them united now more than ever. Mick considered her words as they ventured through the winding halls, past guards and security checkpoints. The starkness of the opulence of the command center contrasted sharply with the harsh conditions of the cells. He needed to rally his allies before it was too late. They found a secluded area to meet. Mick motioned for Lyra to step closer, forming a plan. Tonight, we're having another meeting. We can't just react. We need to be proactive, he said, determination ringing in his voice. Understood. I'll assist in gathering the prisoners. Lyra nodded. How do you want to approach them? We have to hit them with something that resonates, Mick replied, pacing as he brainstormed. Let them know that working with you is the only way out. We can't be torn apart anymore. With every word, he felt a surge of passion. We'll emphasize what's at stake. If we don't act, we'll face punishment, not just for ourselves, but for those who'll follow us. Lyra regarded him thoughtfully. Find Jace. He holds a lot of influence among the prisoners. If you convince him, the other prisoners will follow. Right, Jace? Mick replied, feeling hopeful. Let's gather those who are ready to fight for something better. Later that evening, Mick approached Jace in the rec area. The hulking man was surrounded by a group of prisoners, all laughing at something grim in their confinement. Mick swallowed hard, trying to shake off the anxiety building inside him. Jace, Mick said, stepping forward. The laughter faded, leaving an uncomfortable silence. What do you want, Ryder? Jace crossed his massive arms, his imposing figure casting a shadow. I need to talk to you. Seriously, Mick replied, lowering his voice. It's about Lyra and the meeting tonight. Why should I care about your talk with her? Jace scoffed. Because the Selkith are losing control, and it's our chance to rise above, Mick urged, desperation coloring his tone. Lyra's willing to fight with us, not against us. Why? What's in it for her? Jace challenged suspiciously. Because she believes we deserve better, Mick responded, feeling the urgency tingle in the air. She won't abandon us. Look, I know you're skeptical, but we'll only keep being manipulated if we stay divided. You have no idea what you're getting us into, Ryder, Jace said, still unswayed. No, but I have an idea of what staying quiet will get us. A life in this prison, tortured by their games, Mick said passionately. You can choose to sit by and watch, or you can come together with us and demand a future. Jace regarded him, eyes narrowing as he pondered. And what about you? Are you really prepared to gamble everything? Mick took a deep breath, staring straight into Jace's eyes. I am. If we don't take this opportunity, it'll slip away, and it won't come back. You know it as well as I do. Fine, Jace finally said, his tone grudgingly accepting. I'll hear you out, but if Lyra's playing us, and it ends badly, it'll be on your head. Understood. Together with our fellow prisoners, we will plan, Mick assured, feeling relief wash over him. With Jace on board, the broader goal felt within reach. The murmuring excitement of the other prisoners began to shift. They could feel change in the air. That night, the meeting convened in a confined space within the prison. More prisoners gathered than Mick had expected, fueled by Jace's unexpected endorsement. "Listen up." Mick's voice rang through as he took center stage. "Tonight, we face a pivotal decision. The Selketh want to divide us, but together we can turn the tables. We're not just victims, we're warriors. We deserve more than this." A low roar of excitement surged through the crowd. Mick could see hope flickering among them, kindling into something more substantial. "Lyra stands with us, and together we can create the strength to force a change," he declared, fueled by the energy flowing through him. Jace nodded beside him, adding, "They need to fear our unity more than our defiance. So let's unite. We'll show them that they can't keep us down. Together, we can create a force that they won't ignore." A wave of determination swept through the crowd, electrified by a shared desire for freedom and a sense of purpose. In this moment, they were no longer isolated beings in a ruthless machine. They were a collective ready to carve out a future. As their voices rose, an energy filled the room, transforming this gathering from mere words into tangible resolve. Mick realized then that the path ahead would not be easy. Yet with each face turned toward him, brimming with defiance and courage, he felt certain they were ready to challenge their captors, united in a cause larger than themselves. Chapter 5. A New Beginning. The atmosphere in the Selketh Maximum Security Outpost felt electric as Mick stood before the assembled prisoners, their faces illuminated by the flickering lights above. The previous night's meeting had transformed them from mere captives into a united front ready to incite change. As dawn painted muted colors across the alien landscape, Mick breathed in deeply, excitement mixed with anxiety churning in his stomach. He needed to maintain that momentum. "Listen up," Mick called out, addressing the crowd with genuine urgency. "Today is going to be pivotal. We can't just sit back and wait for the Selketh to act against us. We need to take the initiative." Jace, standing beside him, nodded with a fierce expression. "You all know your strengths. Some of you are strong, others are quick, and some have good connections. We need to leverage that." "Connections?" a tall, lean prisoner named Kirk asked, skepticism evident in his voice. "Who do we even know that could help?" "I know a few guards who might be willing to listen," Mick replied, glancing at Jace, who seemed to consider that angle seriously. "We can't rely on any one person, but if we can just get one willing to share information." "Do you have someone specific in mind?" Jace turned to Mick, leaning forward. "Maybe," Mick replied cautiously. "But I need to be sure about the timing before I make a move. It could blow up in our faces." "Timing, right? The Selketh will expect us to bide our time, so we need to catch them off guard," Jace mused, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Exactly. We can disrupt their plans before they even begin," Mick added, feeling the room vibrate with growing anticipation. "But if they catch us," another prisoner's voice tapered off. "If they catch us, we'll make sure it's worth it," Jace interjected, anger flashing in his eyes. "We can't live like this any longer, waiting to be used." There was a rumble of agreement throughout the group. Mick felt the heat of determination rising, fueling the fire within him. "Let's gather intelligence about their shifts," Mick suggested. "If we can get eyes on the guards, we can plot out their moves. Together, we can outsmart them." "How do we get close enough?" Kirk asked, leaning back against the wall, arms crossing in doubt. "I'll take a risk," Mick said, straightening his posture. "I've been watching them closely. I'll volunteer for light duties around the facility. It'll give me the chance to overhear conversations and see what they're planning." Jace shot him an incredulous look. "And if they catch you, we're not losing our leader to their guards." Mick met Jace's gaze heated. "If we're not willing to take risks, then we might as well lay down and die right now. I need you to trust me, to trust what we can accomplish together." The air in the room thickened as everyone absorbed Mick's words. A tense silence followed until Jace nodded slowly. "I'll back you, but you have to come straight back. We can't afford to lose you." "I will," Mick assured him, Gather your equipment, men, Jace declared, nodding towards the sleeping quarters. You all know what needs doing. We'll train in the rec area until Mick is back. As the group began to disperse, Mick felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The air hummed with purpose, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the hour that would change everything. A few hours later, Mick reported for duty in the supply room, his heart racing as he grabbed his gear. Memories of the prison walls closing in weighed heavily, a reminder of why he did this. If it meant risking everything for freedom, then so be it. Entering the common area, a pair of Selkith guards surveyed the space with eyes narrowed in suspicion. Mick pushed his shoulders back, forcing himself to appear as casual as possible. Ryder, you're late, one of the guards, a burly Selkith named Zarek, grumbled. Just getting things squared away in the back, Mick replied, keeping his voice steady. What's on the agenda today? Nothing for you to worry about, human, Zarek snapped, waving Mick off. Mick internally steeled himself, knowing that the right moment would come, he just needed patience. Throughout the day, he moved from room to room under the watchful gaze of the guards. He carefully eavesdropped on their conversations, catching snippets of plans that floated in the air. Have you heard anything from Commander Magnus about the heightened tensions? One guard asked casually. Only that we need to keep a closer eye on the prisoners. A riot is brewing, the other replied, shaking his head. Discipline will be key. A growing alarm began to rise in Mick's chest. They knew they were restless. If he could gather this intel, it might give him leverage to negotiate later. Working silently through the hours, he filled his mind with details, notepads filled with quick scrawls hidden in the folds of his uniform. As evening approached, he finally made his way to the rec area where prisoners were congregating, desperately hoping for a positive reception. Jace noticed him first, his expression lighting up with relief. You're back. What's the word? Mick quickly gestured for silence, ensuring the room tuned in closely. The Selkith are more aware than we thought. They're expecting upheaval, and it's only a matter of time before they tighten their grip. Did they say anything concrete? Jace pressed, his voice a mix of excitement and concern. Yes. Apparently, rumors are swirling about potential riots, and they want to ensure nothing gets out of hand, Mick explained, feeling the tension in the air. We have to act fast. What's the plan? Kirk asked, excitement creeping into his tone. The guards are expecting us to lash out, Mick replied, scanning the room for support. We'll need to keep the element of surprise on our side. Let's keep our heads while they're pulling their own. We're setting a time to act, not just randomly, he emphasized. Jace nodded approvingly. I think we can work with that. We can train to get the flow down, but we need to think about gathering more supplies. We might need weapons if things go sideways. We can scrounge what we can, but let's avoid direct confrontation. We need to outsmart them, not engage unless we have to, Mick said, feeling the magic of solidarity thrumming through him. Count me in, Jace replied, determination shining in his eyes. We've waited long enough. It's time to take this fight to them. Mick felt the fire building within them, stronger than before. Tonight, we'll gather everyone in the rec area, and we'll establish roles. We'll map out our best options going forward. The men moved in a network of determination, eagerness cascading like a wave through the group. Mick could sense that this was more than just a rebellion. This was a fight for dignity, for their very lives. You ready to rally them? Lyra appeared, standing at the entrance, observing the energy in the space. Yes, more than ready, Mick replied, meeting her gaze. We're prepared to see this through. All the way. Then lead the way, she encouraged, her eyes sparkling with an intensity that mirrored his own. That night, the rec area felt more vibrant than ever, charged with purpose. Mick stood at the front, surrounded by allies. Neither captives nor prisoners anymore, but a community bound together by a shared goal. Tonight, we lay our cards on the table, he began, his voice echoing in the large space. We've talked about our fears and frustrations, but tonight we act. Together, we're heading into battle. Not against each other, but for each other. Cheers erupted in the room, voices rising in unison, filling the hollow confines with a fierce energy. We've been held down long enough.